pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And could you please let the record know that all 7 commissioners are present for this special meeting? And the purpose of this special meeting is twofold. First is a discussion and possible vote on additional borrowing of funds from Sussex County. And then the second would be further discussion and possible vote on the draft ordinance to amend Chapter 230 of the City Code. These are both issues that we spoke about at the last meeting and we put on this special meeting in order to have a vote and to give the path forward. The first being A, I think in your package you'll find something that Glenn put together last night to explain a little bit further, and the finance director gave him numbers on this. And just to give some background on this, if you recall, we did approve borrowing $3 million from the county, Sussex County, to do some electrical work for phase 2 on the plant project. They are going to put up $3 million. We'd put up $3 million, and that $3 million would be spread out over the next 10 years at 0% interest. So we'd have to pay the principal back over the next 10 years. As our Public Works Director pointed out to us at the last meeting, there are some other items in the phase 3 of the plan upgrades that need to be done sooner rather than later. And Sussex County has graciously also allowed that we can borrow from them an additional $1.5 million. And again, they'd put up $1.5 million, so that $9 million total would be done on finishing up phase 2 as well as starting the phase 3 process. Again, the city of Rehoboth having a responsibility for $4.5 million, the county putting up $4.5 million. It is in the design phase as we speak, and hopefully the design should be done before the end of the year and the actual work start later in the year as well. As you can recall, we have been granted a little over $52 million in a line of credit from DNREC. And if you recall as well, in the referendum for the Ocean Outfall project, we were allowed to spend up to $52.5 million on our
Do you mean, Mayor, spend or borrow?
Borrow,
Spend or borrow?
borrow.
Okay, thank you. That's important.
borrow
Thanks.
against our referendum. And up until most recently, we have borrowed just under $42 million. So approximately $10 million left on our borrowing capacity. Now, with that in mind, the $3 million that we've already agreed on would be not part of the DNREC loan, but it would be part of that $10 million capacity. So that basically, if we do approve this today for the $1.5 million additional, that would also count against our borrowing, so that we have approximately just under, it's about $41.5 million outstanding now that we have borrowed against the project. This $4.5 million that we borrow from the county would be add on to that, so we'd be somewhere in the neighborhood of $46+ million of our capacity borrowed, so that even though that we have a little bit more than $10 million in our line of credit with DNREC for the project, we would have to get another referendum to borrow that full $10 million. So that's kind of the background. I'll answer any questions, or Kevin is here to answer any questions from that. And he just did discuss the need for these improvements sooner rather than later. And I think it's a very generous fact that the county is providing us the opportunity to borrow up to $4.5 million from them over 10 years. It will cause us to have to pay back $450,000 annually, but there will be no interest And the interest on the loan from DENREC is somewhere a little over 2.2 and 3/8, 2.5%. Any questions?
No, I believe that Kevin's presentation at the last meeting helped validate the need to go forward, and on a expedited basis compared to what we were anticipating. I'm hesitant to vote yes today, only because I'm hesitant to vote on it because I only got Glenn's memorandum last night at 10 o'clock before going to bed. And the resolution before us has yet to be embedded in the agenda so that nobody watching or in the audience or members of the public can see it. So I think it's needed. I would likely vote yes at a May regular meeting, but I'm just not quite ready today.
Would you like me to read the resolution for the benefit of people watching and people in the audience since they don't have it? It was late coming because we spent some time making sure that we knew exactly where we were at with our borrowing and making sure the debt limit's not exceeded and all those sorts of things. But it is contained in the resolution, so I'm happy to read it if you think that's helpful. Yeah. So this is a resolution of the mayor and commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach to proceed with the issuance of debt obligations of up to $1.5 million of the previously authorized up to $52.5 million to finance wastewater. It says wastewater, should be wastewater, apologies for that. To finance wastewater treatment plant reliability and process improvements. Whereas pursuant to section 40D of chapter 197, volume 54 of the laws of Delaware as amended, that's the city charter, the commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach adopted a resolution on April 27, 2015, which first proposed the issuance of up to $52.5 million of general obligation bonds to finance the Ocean Outfall Project as described therein. And second, ordered a public hearing to be held on May 15, 2015 at 7 p.m. with respect to such proposed issuance of bonds. Whereas the public hearing was held on May 15, 2015 after proper notice, and the commissioners thereafter adopted a second resolution ordering a special election to be held on June 27, 2015. Whereas on June 27, 2015, the special election was held for the purpose of voting for or against the proposed issuance of the city of its general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed $52.5 million on the terms and for the purpose set forth in the April 27, 2015 resolution. Whereas the purpose set forth in the April 27, 2015 resolution included an outfall, a pipeline from the wastewater treatment plant to the outfall, a pumping station, and wastewater treatment plant reliability and process improvements, including an enhanced method to process and dry sludge. Whereas at the special election, voters passed the proposed borrowing to finance the Ocean Outfall Project by a vote of 637 aye to 606 nay. Whereas pursuant to the borrowing duly authorized at the June 27, 2015 special election, the commissioners proceeded to finance the Ocean Outfall Project and plant improvements and issued debt obligations in the amount of $41,523,943.10 as of April 15, 2019 of the duly authorized up to $52.5 million. Whereas pursuant to the borrowing duly authorized at the June 27, 2015 special election, the commissioners proceeded to finance Phase 2 plant improvements by issuing debt obligations in an amount up to $3 million of the duly authorized up to $52.5 million, and therefore of the authorized $52.5 million, if the city were to use the entire $3 million authorized, the total aggregate obligated would be $44,523,943.10. Whereas Phase 3 of the plant improvements scheduled for 2022 includes, among others, structural repairs to the flooring system, replacement of the influent pipes, and replacement of the mechanical screening systems in the Headworks building, along with desperately needed structural repairs to the existing oxidation ditches and associated effluent piping. Whereas the city's Public Works Director has advised that the above referenced portion of the Phase 3 plant improvements are too critical in nature to delay addressing until 2022. Whereas the commissioners desire to include such portion of the Phase 3 plant improvement items within the Phase 2 upgrade, which is currently being designed by Sussex County. Whereas such portion of the Phase 3 plant improvements are estimated to cost approximately $3 million, with Sussex County being obligated for $1/2 or $1.5 million of the cost of the improvements, and the city being obligated for $1/2 or $1.5 million of the cost of the improvements. Whereas pursuant to the borrowing duly authorized at the June 27, 2015 special election, the commissioners desire to finance a portion of the Phase 3 plant improvements contemporaneously with the Phase 2 plant improvements by issuing debt obligations in an amount up to $1.5 million, of the duly authorized up to $52.5 million, and therefore, of the authorized $52.5 million, if the city were to use the entire $3 million previously authorized and the entire $1.5 million contemplated by this resolution, the total amount obligated would be $46,023,943.10. Whereas the Commissioners desire to authorize the mayor of the city of Rehoboth Beach to execute any and all instruments necessary or desired to secure financing for a portion of the Phase 3 plan improvements. Now therefore, be it resolved by the Commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach in session met this 6th day of May 2019, as follows. First, the mayor of the city of Rehoboth Beach shall be and is hereby authorized and directed to take any and all actions to determine the final terms and to execute any and all documents necessary or desired to secure financing of up to $1.5 million to proceed with a portion of the Phase 3 plan improvements, including structural repairs to the flooring system, replacement of the influent pipes, and replacement of the mechanical screening systems in the headworks building, along with desperately needed structural repairs to the existing oxidation ditches, and associated effluent piping. And this resolution shall be effective immediately upon its adoption by the Commissioners. So that is the resolution. Thanks for letting me take the time to read that into the record.
Thank you. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, can have mine, Gary, if you'd like it. I've read it.
While he's doing that, Mayor, may I ask just a question, or actually a comment? One is, just could we have I know there's a really great report that was done up, I think, by Kevin and his team. They kind of showed exactly where the expenditures were going to go up to the 45 million and laid out everything. I'm wondering if we could just include that report in our next financial update next month that shows exactly kind of where all this funding's going and where we are relative to the debt limit. Okay, super. Thank you. And just to clarify, we're still under the 52 million. We're at about 46 with this approval. Okay, thank you. Just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Any further questions? Yes.
So I have two questions. Does the line of credit from Genrec
Name, your name, please.
Gary Glass 105 Country Club Drive, does the line of credit expire at the end of this year to the 52 million? I understood at previous meetings that we have up to 52 million, but we have to use that by the end of this year or we lose it.
No.
No?
And again, as we're borrowing this $4.5 million from the state, this is not part of the 10 million that we have left from the state. Conceivably, we're going to have to, as we borrow this from Sussex County, and we have a contract with the state to borrow up to 52 million, we may have to revise that contract to make that loan smaller. If there aren't any other questions, go around and I'll take this vote. If we can get a motion and a second to approve.
Mayor, before you go,
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry, just popped into my head. Back to Commissioner Mills' concerns. If we were, just for information, if we were to delay this vote to the voting meeting in May, does that cause us any consternation or any problems with other timelines?
So the purpose of trying to get this done today and have a special meeting prior to the regular workshop meeting, the county is meeting tomorrow. They're having their finance committee update, and the Director of Public Works there, Hans Medlars, plans to advise the county council of this vote today.
I think that was mentioned at our last meeting, and
it
that's a
was.
good recall. Thank you very much.
Gary Glass. I don't understand why there's all this, what appears to be, and perception can be everything. We talk about this with regards to safety on the boardwalk, traffic on the streets, and the parking garage. Perception's everything. The perception of secrecy by this group of commissioners is appalling for me as a resident and taxpayer and homeowner. I don't understand. And I thought that we were supposed to be giving notice 7 days prior on the agenda and that all the material should be attached. I myself found a mistake in the wastewater proposal that you all had, and Glenn corrected that mathematical mistake, which would have caused the homeowners to pay a lot more for their water and sewer. And so I think it's important that the public have an opportunity to review this material in advance of the meeting and not listen to a reading of it, which is hard to follow from A to Z. So I don't understand why we're not given this material, why it's not attached to the agendas, why it's not out on the table, and why even the commissioners aren't getting it until 10 o'clock at night. It is an important matter for us. I think that the wastewater plant and the water service and all the utilities that we use here in town are very important to every single resident. And we all have a right to know under, I think, the Opens Meetings Law. So I don't know why it appears to me that you all are violating that meetings law rule. If in fact you are, and it would be nice to know, and I don't even know if I can trust Glenn with his statements because he seems to be more of the mayor's attorney than the city resident's attorney. So I guess a complaint to the Attorney General's office or to the Public Integrity, where there have been several already, will be in following this meeting, another complaint going in. Because the public has a right to know this. And I agree with what Stan said, I agree with what Tony just asked, and nobody seems to want to explain why. And Glenn made a comment that he was just taking shots at Paul and Sharon for not getting it out. He's not taking shots, Glenn. He's asking for material in advance so people can process it, can verify it, and look up facts and see if it's right.
Who's taking
and work
shots,
through the
Gary?
math.
I didn't hear that. I
It's
accuse some,
your comment, and it's just unacceptable.
what comment, Gary?
Where you said, did you make this so the public on the TV can hear what can know what's going on? Of course he said that. I'm glad he
No,
said
my
that. The
comment
public
was,
has a right to
my comment was I'd be happy to read it so anybody watching could hear it because they don't have it.
Did you
Gary,
make a comment about why did he say it for the TV?
no, I didn't hear that comment.
I heard it. So I just think that we need to be open. We wouldn't even be having this discussion if this was already out on the table and everybody had a chance to read it 2 or 3 days before. Or what I think.
Gary,
the law says
it is a city policy to try to have the documents a week in advance. This time it didn't happen, and it doesn't always happen because sometimes things are moving in real time. I handed you my copy when you asked for it. There'll be copies available to anybody who wants them. It's a public document.
Kevin brought this up at the 24th meeting in April of this year. You had till the 24th to get this ready to go. And I don't understand. I mean, nothing changed between the 24th and now.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
I'd like to respond. My view has always been to let the members of the public see what we're talking about up here, and that's where we developed that support document policy. I've just always favored getting documents out ahead of time to everybody so they can see them. The example today of reading it, I think, is a good try, but I'm not sure that anybody that listened to that document can fully understand it, especially this document, although particularly hard to follow just reading it. I do believe that if we wanted to vote today, in my world, we would have had this document presented to us either at the same time of Kevin's presentation or shortly thereafter, so that we could have a special meeting then if we needed and be able to vote on it prior to the county council's thing. It's just how my timing would have been. I'd want to explain, since I was on the communications committee when we did the support document packet, I think Pat was gone at that time. And we do have a support document policy. And while I don't want anybody to confuse it with the agendas, because agendas have to be noticed per FOIA and be out there 7 days in advance. And we've been doing that largely, or have been doing it. However, when it comes to support documents and embedding them in the agendas, the support document policy, number one, says it's volunteer. Number two, it says that even if they are ready, they don't have to be put on there in advance of the meeting because the presenter may want to have the first shot at it rather than having it out there. That is their choice. Again, that's that policy. I think we've been doing a phenomenal job of getting most of the documents out there ahead of time. In this case, it just didn't happen, but I think largely we're doing that. Could we be better? probably, if we were more attuned to some of it. But again, that a support document is not embedded in the agenda beforehand is no reason to go to the Attorney General's office, because it's not a violation of the Freedom of Information Act. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
can I ask one question? I second that. It's not, as far as I can tell, it's not a FOIA violation, so that's one consideration that's informing how I will vote. Second thing, Ian, I'm sorry, and I know I'm the secretary of this group, but I didn't see any, as far as I can tell, specific comments on this particular issue since April 24th, since the public discussion on April 24th. Has there been any public comments at all on the approach or, okay, I just wanted to make sure of that. So since April 24th when Kevin presented? Okay, thank you.
Well, if there's no reason not to, I'd like to get a motion and a second to, on this resolution.
I'd like to make another comment in terms of real time when things happen. You know, sometimes this is the way it does happen. And when we need something like this, it's so critical to our infrastructure and the timing. I know it's not necessarily good in terms of, but I think it's clear in this particular resolution, and we've talked about it, that there's really shouldn't be, I mean, unless you feel like you need to wordsmith the resolution, which that is why we have a city solicitor who puts these things together. So I'm comfortable with moving forward with this. So I'd like to move forward with approving a resolution of the mayor and commissioners of the city of Rehoboth Beach to proceed with the issuance of debt obligations of up to $1.5 million of the previously authorized up to $52.5 million to finance wastewater treatment plant reliability and process improvements, with the change in that title of the misspelling of wastewater, and also line 62 to change to May 2019.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the table to approve a resolution of the mayor and commissioners with the issuance of debt obligations of up to $1.5 million towards the previously authorized $52.5 million to finance wastewater treatment plant reliability and process improvements with the amendments. Any further discussion? If not, Commissioner Sheffer. Aye. Commissioner Cluzzi.
Aye.
Commissioner Mills.
No.
Commissioner Sharp. Oh, I'm sorry, Schlosser. I apologize.
Okay. You want to vote for me? Aye.
I apologize. Commissioner Sharp.
Aye.
Commissioner Byrne.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. And motion carries. Thank you very much. The second portion of our meeting, our special voting meeting today, is further discussion and possible vote on the draft ordinance to amend Chapter 230 of the City Code relating to special events / expressive activity. I think we've gone over this a number of different times in the most recent 3 or 4 meetings, and I think the last meeting we had our most recent discussion, and it was determined at that time to set up a special meeting to vote on this prior to our May regular meeting. And with that, I'll open it up to any comments or questions, anything from your perspective.
Sure. I'll mention a couple things, Mayor. There was a couple comments at the last meeting of potential revisions. As I've noted previously, we worked with the ACLU. They're at a point where they don't object to the ordinance in its current form. One of the comments from them was that the way that it's implemented will, sometimes be determinative of whether the ACLU agrees with the way it's done or not. So one of the things that was raised last time was whether we could waive the 36-hour requirement for expressive activity applications. That's one of those items that I think you should leave in the ordinance, and to the extent there is something that is clearly a spontaneity type event that, I've spoken with the city police department, and those are certain things under free speech that we just need to allow to occur in certain instances. So that one, I don't think that you should proceed with any changes to it. The other one that was raised was a comment about whether the organizer of an expressive activity should be required to remove the trash that's generated by people who are in attendance. I wanted the record to be clear on this, that the provision regarding trash pickup, and that's 230-15, is line 243 in a copy that I have. It might be a little bit off that, but let me read it for you. It says, "The applicant shall be responsible for the removal of all of the applicant's debris, litter, and/or property associated with an expressive activity upon conclusion of the activity." And then it goes on and says, if said debris, litter, and/or property is not removed as required herein, the city shall have the authority to remove it at the expense of the applicant. To be clear, that provision, and this was a provision that I spoke with the ACLU about, it specifically says the applicant's debris, to make clear that the applicant's not responsible for other debris that might be generated during expressive activity that the applicant didn't anticipate. So I think that comment is already addressed in the ordinance. And that's all I have.
Any other comments, questions?
I do, just real quick, Mayor. I may have the wrong version of this in the packet, but I thought we had eliminated the $50 fee under line 131. Am I looking at the wrong, whatever's in my
Line is that,
packet, it
Lisa?
says 131.
I'm sorry, so for 131 is in the special events portion of the
Yes.
ordinance, so there's still a fee for special events.
Okay.
There's not a fee for expressive activities. So
Yeah, is that very clear in here?
So if you go to Article 3, which begins at line 190,
Yep,
I don't think it says there shall be no fee, but there's not a complementary provision as, you know,
yeah.
this ordinance kind of tracks the second article and third article track, and where the second article relating to special events has a permit fee, there is no similar
Okay,
provision here.
yeah,
So-
my question, thank you for clarifying that. I read this a couple times. I just want to make clear that, or sure that even though it's in that section, or it's in 131, it's not going to, it's absolutely clear in this that it's not applying to section.
It looks
you know,
like, I mean, it says
230.
special events,
Yeah.
so it doesn't say expressive activity.
so everybody's
to
comfortable
me,
with that, that it's-
It's clear
okay.
to me.
Okay, as long as we are, that was my only question. Okay.
Other comments, Commissioners? Yes. And if you can say your name and address, please.
This is my third meeting, and I just have two comments. My first is, I wasn't clear on the waiver when Glenn was talking about the ACLU commenting on the waivers. So there is a waiver in there for fast-breaking activities?
It doesn't specifically address if there's a fast-breaking event. I mean, the ordinance requires a 36-hour application. That is maintained in the ordinance. The ACLU knows that it's being maintained in the ordinance. We did have a discussion, which I also had with the police department, that, you know, free speech, constitutional rights require that the city, in certain instances, if it's truly a spontaneous event, we need to move out of the way and let it happen. Everybody understands that. I don't know of a perfect way to address that within the ordinance. I don't know how you define what is truly a spontaneous event that needs to, but there's been a general discussion internally about the need to honor those free speech rights in those sorts of events.
Great. My second comment is that I think the mayor and the solicitor and the manager and all the commissioners need to be acknowledged for the effort, incredible effort that's gone into this issue to allow us to be able to express ourselves. You're to be commended for that. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's nice to hear once in a while.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
How refreshing.
Excuse my voice, Joanne Cavey, outside of Ahoga. I do want to just say something quickly about that. The only section where I do have a question is still about the cleanup. And I think we all agree on what it means, but it does specifically say the applicant is responsible for litter, debris. I mean, I can understand yuck signs, banners, but, and again, I don't know, it's something we have to amend or revise, but as long as everybody's clear that if I'm the applicant who actually submits it, that I'm not responsible for every piece of litter. I hope nobody leaves any behind, but if so. So if that's the intent of that section, then okay, but the way it's worded, it does leave pause for, you know, somebody throws a hand down on it. Am I gonna
As again, there's two sections in the ordinance. The first section is for special events, and that cleanup for special events is addressed at 230-8. It's line 147, Commissioners. There it says, cleanup, the applicant shall be responsible for the removal of all debris, litter, and equipment generated or caused by a special event within 24 hours of the event. So there it's clear that any debris or litter is the responsibility of the applicant. If you move back to the expressive activity section, cleanup in that section is at line 242, which is 230-15 in the ordinance. The applicant shall be responsible for the removal of all of the applicant's debris. So again, I think if you compare the two provisions for cleanup, it makes clear that in expressive activity, it's just the applicant's debris. That's right.
Thank you. I do want to say one other thing, if I may. First, I want to thank City Solicitor Brendan Gonzalez for his work and commitment to amend Chapter 230. I think the revised draft, if approved, it protects and recognizes our First Amendment right to assembly. I also want to thank the mayor and the commission. You know, with all the cynicism about government these days, it's encouraging when elected officials who may or may not have agreed with us at first listen and recognize that something had to be fixed. You know, our Constitution begins with the words, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." You know, the union wasn't perfect 200 years ago. It's not perfect today. But I believe each time elected officials and private citizens work together, you know, whether it's a national, a state, or a local level, we move closer to what the founding fathers had in mind. Although it's a small city, small state, but we're part of that larger union. And I think by amending Chapter 230, you all have provided tangible proof that we can keep working toward that more perfect union. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Betty Deacon. I live at 2201 Hickory Lane, Lewis, Delaware, in the Sandy Bridge development. Bought the house here 20-some years ago, so I've been here for a long time. I'm retired now, but in my professional career, I always worked for an elected official in city government first and then in the federal government. And I'm very proud of the commissioners for what you've done. You've worked with the people, which is what your job is, and we the people always have the right to express our feelings. So once again, I want to thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Glassman, I'm on the board of Country Club Estates Homeowners Association. We have our homeowners association meeting in Grove Park every year in September. And are we now, as a small association, going to be required to comply with the permitting and fees for this? Meaning, are we going to have to pay a $50 fee to have our annual meeting, which we've never had to do before at Grove Park? We've had to pay a fee, I take that back, at 25, and I think it did go up to 50. Are we also going to have to pay the $550 security deposit against using facilities? And more importantly, are we going to have to obtain an insurance policy for $1 million? Because those are all listed. And is this going to prohibit small associations, especially like homeowners associations in the city, from having their events? Did somebody answer that?
If I may, Mayor, so the Grove Park events are different. There's a different application for that, and you will not have to pay that.
Any other first questions? If not, if I can get a motion in a second to,
Mayor, I move approval of an ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Rehoboth Beach by amending Chapter 230 by adding a new article relating to expressive activity permits. And let me just add my own comment to that motion.
I'd like to second it first and then go into discussion.
Thank you,
if that's all right.
Commissioner. I've been really pleased with the input that has come from our citizens. It's been very, very helpful. It's helped us, as Joanne said, to work toward that more perfect city in this instance, and I think it's a model for how to do that. I'm also really pleased with my colleagues and with the solicitor for working so closely with the ACLU and making sure that important entities like the ACLU are also supportive, because there are people that deal with these issues every day and have expertise in it, and we can all learn from that. So, thank you.
Niels?
Yeah, I would just like to say that, and again, remind people that while we've had to spend a good bit of time on this because it wasn't perfectly presented originally, that everybody's intention was to protect the citizens, protect people participating in their rights under the First Amendment to free speech. And I just applaud the folks who have come forward to help us get it right. And it's another demonstration on how when we do work together, good things can happen. So thank you all for that.
Thank you, Steve. And I'd like to say the same thing. I appreciate all the input that we've had. I know that it's been a long time coming for this, and I really appreciate all the work that the solicitor has done on this, working with the ACLU, working with the people in the community to come up with something that works. Not everything is perfect, but I think this comes pretty close to it, so thank you very much for that. With that, we have a motion and a second to approve an ordinance to amend the municipal code of the city of Rehoboth Beach by amending chapter 230 by adding a new article relating to expressive activity permits. If there's no further questions, Commissioner Cluzzi,
Aye.
Commissioner Mills,
Aye.
Commissioner Schlosser,
Aye.
Commissioner Sharp,
Very pleased to cast an aye vote.
Commissioner Byrne,
Aye.
Commissioner Sheffer,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming and thanking us.
you.
We rarely get that.
And this meeting's adjourned for 5 minutes, and then we'll go right back into our other meeting. Thank you.